Hello, Saints. It was just 2 days before the Passover and the festival of the unleavened bread. And the chief priests and the scribes, they were looking for a cunning way to arrest Jesus and kill him. Of course, not during the festival, they said, so that there won't be a riot among the people. Now, Jesus had been staying with his friends at Bethany, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And of course, while there, a formal dinner engagement at the home of Simon the leper takes place, where Mary of Bethany enters the party and anoints the feet of Jesus with very expensive perfume, drying the overspill with her hair. This and its paralleling story that we see in Luke tend to conflate two Marys in Scripture. Mary of Bethany, as shown here, and Mary of Magdala, better known as Mary Magdalene. It may well be because Luke has introduced the story in the part of the narrative while Jesus was still in Galilee. Magdala was a Roman town on the shores of Galilee, and so one might surmise that the Mary of Magdala was the same person as Mary of Bethany. Roman Catholic and traditional church history has conflated the two. But I'm not convinced. Mary of Bethany, for me, isn't the same person as Mary of Magdala. On the first day of unleavened bread, Jesus' disciples ask him where they are to prepare the Passover. And Jesus gives a cryptic answer by saying, "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him. Wherever he enters, tell the owner of the house, the teacher says, 'Where is my guest room, where I might eat the Passover with my disciples?' And he'll show you a large room upstairs, furnished and ready. Make the preparations for us there." Now at the Passover meal, Jesus speaks of one who would betray him. He's speaking of Judas Iscariot. He says, "The one who is dipping bread in the bowl with me." He then takes the last elements of the Passover and introduces them as part of the communion service that we do to this day. He mentions the cup as his blood of the covenant poured out for many, and then the bread, which is representative of his body. In John's Gospel, it appears that Jesus' warning that his followers would deny him takes place before they leave the upper room for the Mount of Olives. Here in Mark, they sing a hymn and they went out to the Mount of Olives. It's after they left the upper room that Jesus forewarns them that they will all fall away and deny him. And then Mark quotes scripture, "I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered." Jesus mentions in the gospel that after he's risen, he would go ahead of them to Galilee. Remember that Sunday morning when Jesus tells the women to remind his followers to go to Galilee to meet him? When they reach the Mount of Olives, they come to a place named Gethsemane, and he has the group sit there and wait while he prays. But before he prays, he takes three of them a little further, Peter, James, and John. And he tells them that he's grieved deeply and to stay there and to stay awake. So as he proceeds forward, he falls to the ground and cries to his Father, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but you will." Jesus finds Peter, James, and John sleeping twice, and then tells them at the second time that the betrayer is near. The mob appears, and Peter jumps up, drawing his sword, cutting off the ear of the priest's servant. But only Mark doesn't name him. Instead, he identifies him as one of those who stood by drew his sword. He goes on to say, then they all deserted him and ran away, and that now a certain young man wearing nothing but linen cloth was following him. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth behind and ran away naked. Many believe this to be the reference to the writer of Mark's Gospel, John Mark, as a young boy. It was at his home that Jesus and his disciples are believed to have observed their Passover. And from Peter himself, Mark learned the story that he now writes, introducing a cameo of himself as an eyewitness of Jesus' arrest. But now we're at the time for judgment. We're at the time where the serpent will be judged and the propitiation of the cross made for you and I. Next time, blessings.